Outside their ship, 4 astronauts gather samples of rock from Mars. They are warned by their co-workers inside that a storm is approaching, one that would be far more severe than they had anticipated. It is suggested that they enter the building. The crew is debating whether to try to take off or wait out the storm. Most want to chance it and stay, but the commander uses her authority to resolve the matter. They will be departing. They try to fix the ship after some debris from the storm damages it as they prepare to take off. Mark is struck by some debris and sent flying away from the others as they fight to address the issue and go back inside. His communication systems are damaged by the debris, making it impossible for the other members of the team to contact him. As the storm worsens, the crew inside warns them they must depart quickly since the ship won't be able to resist the wind for much longer. The commander stays behind to try to find Mark even after sending her crew back inside. Despite her best efforts, she must return inside if she hopes to save the other members of her squad. As they leave Mars, the team laments the death of their companion. At a news conference, the NASA director informs the public that the team's trip to Mars was successful and that they are returning home. But regrettably, one of the astronauts lost their life. When Mark awakens, he is still on Mars, half buried in the sand, and his suit is sending out various alerts regarding his blood pressure and oxygen levels. When he gets to his feet, he discovers that some debris has pierced him. In order to maintain a steady air pressure within his suit, he trims off the excess while leaving the metal rod in place. He returns to the base, enters, and surgically removes the debris from his abdomen before restapling the wound. For the record, Mark switches on a video log and describes what occurred to him, stating that the debris sealed his suit and shut off his communication systems. He is clear that he doesn't hold his crew accountable for abandoning him, stating that they had every cause to believe he was dead. He understands that he will run out of food long before NASA can send another manned expedition to Mars, which will be at least 4 years away. He puts some of his crew's items away and strolls around admiring what they left behind. He makes a thorough note of how much food he has left after going over the base's stocks. He understands that he can only eat for a year at a time and that he will have to figure out how to grow enough food for 3 more years. Because he is a botanist, Mark is fortunate. He decides to find a way to plant the potatoes that the crew brought for Thanksgiving. He starts by removing the solar panels, carrying a ton of dirt inside and distributing it, and even turning the crew's feces into fertilizer. He plants the potatoes and tills the soil inside. He starts working on finding a technique to produce additional water after realizing he does not have enough on hand to adequately hydrate all of the crops, after he sets up a machine that uses tiny chemical fires to make water. And the plants start to grow. NASA is holding Mark's funeral back on Earth. The director shoots it down when Vincent suggests going back to Mars to retrieve the equipment that Mark's crew left behind, claiming that everything they do would have to be broadcast on television and that he doesn't want the world to see Mark's body. Vincent notes that they could pretend that they were returning to Mars to retrieve Mark's body for his family, even though his body would never decay there. After receiving coordinates that point to Mark's location, Satellite Supervisor Mindy observes movement at the base. She promptly notifies the director by making an urgent phone call. Given that they have 24 hours to disclose the tape, they attempt to decide what they will say to the public after realizing that it is evidence that Mark is still alive. They fear that NASA will be criticized for leaving one of its astronauts behind. To inform the public that they will do everything in their power to ensure Mark returns home safely, they plan to arrange a news conference. Mark looks at charts at the base on Mars and determines his location to meet the next Mars mission in 4 years. His rover can only go 35 miles at a time, and it is roughly 3,200 kilometers away. He starts modifying the rover to extend its range without requiring it to be returned to the base for recharging. He is able to double the battery life, but he must turn off the rover's warmth in order to do so. He chooses to dig up some radioactive material to keep in the rear to keep warm, because it's so cold and he won't be able to make it through the journey without heat. At another press conference, NASA informs the public that they have determined Mark's objective by monitoring him with their satellites to meet the next Mars expedition when they arrive. In an attempt to reach Mark before something untoward occurs, they have accelerated the projected completion time from 4 years to 9 months. In order to avoid disturbing Mark's crew while they are still attempting to return home, they choose not to inform them that he is still alive. Mark plants the smaller potatoes and saves the larger ones for later use as he gathers 400 potatoes from his garden. In order to contact NASA using the duplicate they have on Earth, he locates the Pathfinder, a rover that was lost on Mars a number of years ago. Mark builds up a hexadecimal communication system so that he can ask more than yes or no inquiries, but NASA can only actually move the camera around using it. Mark receives instructions from NASA via the Pathfinder on how to hack into the rover in order to speak with NASA via the Pathfinder. Mark is relieved when Vincent explains their plan to save him. Vincent must acknowledge to Mark that his crew is still unaware of his whereabouts, and Mark is incensed that NASA has kept his team in the dark. Mark's crew receives messages from NASA informing them that he is still alive and that they want to attempt to save him when they go to fetch their mail. Mark calculates that he has just enough food to last until NASA can send another ship to pick him up, using all of the food that is left over from the base plus all of the potatoes he has grown, if all goes according to plan. Mark gets hurt and his helmet is shattered when the entrance chamber explodes as he is tending to his garden. He rapidly replaces his oxygen by sealing it with duct tape. When he returns to his garden, he discovers that the exposure to Mars' atmosphere killed every plant he had and ruined the irrigation system he had put in place. After Mark reports the accident to NASA, they understand that he won't have enough food to last him until they arrive if they don't expedite their arrival time. NASA gives Mark's former crew permission to get in touch with him, and they reunite while jeering at one another. Mark reseals the hole where the hatch was and removes all the dirt and tarp from the section of the foundation he had set aside for growing his potatoes. Since there is most likely nothing wrong with the ship and the inspection would take up needless time, NASA chooses to forego inspections on the vessel they intend to use to save Mark. All of their hard work is destroyed when the spacecraft explodes at launch. After watching the newscast about NASA's unsuccessful launch, China's space agency offers assistance. NASA is able to develop a more effective plan to save Mark in less time with the assistance of physicist Rich. Mark's crew is aboard the Hermes, a ship that will swing back into Earth's orbit long enough to deliver a new supply of food before launching back into space to pick Mark up without making a landing. The plan's only drawback is that it would lengthen the Hermes journey by 500 days. The plan is vetoed by NASA's director, who explains that he doesn't want to endanger everyone's life on board the Hermes in order to save Mark. This is unfair, according to another NASA coordinator, who secretly transmits the plan's specifics to the Hermes. Given that they will be committing mutiny if they carry out the plan, Mark's crew debates it among themselves. After debating whether or not to spend an additional 500 days in space far from their loved ones, they conclude that it is the right decision. A unanimous decision is made to return for Mark. Every crew member gets in touch with their family to inform them that they will be gone for longer than they had anticipated. The director chastises the other coordinator for surreptitiously providing the crew with the plans after NASA is informed that the Hermes has deviated from its planned trajectory. Mark must figure out how to transport all of the equipment that keeps him alive, the machines that provide him oxygen and heat, to the ship in time to meet the Hermes as they pass Mars if the plan is to succeed. Without spending as much fuel, the Hermes swings by Earth. 7 months later, Mark starts getting ready to meet the Hermes. After gathering everything he needs, he loads everything into the rover. In order to periodically recharge the rover without returning to the base, he brings the solar panels with him. NASA gives Mark the order to remove all of the equipment that is no longer needed because they believe that Mark's ship will need to be traveling very quickly in order to reach the Hermes. He removes everything that would have been needed for a 6-person crew, leaving only enough for the 1-person journey. Since the Hermes will be controlling his spacecraft remotely, he is also told to remove all of the control panels and replace the ship's front and sides with tarp to lighten its weight. For the final time, Mark exits the rover and gets ready inside the ship. After shaving off his newly grown beard, he changes into a spacesuit and fresh attire and waits for his team to give him instructions. They comfort him and caution him that the force of the launch could cause him to faint. Almost instantly after Mark's ship takes flight, the tarps are drawn into space. After passing out, Mark can't get in touch with his crew to let them know he's all right. His crew tells Mark that they won't be able to get their spacecraft near enough to Mark's when he wakes up. In order to slow them down and increase their chances of reaching Mark, the commander gives one of the crew members instructions to build an explosive and rig it to the back of the ship. After detonating the bomb, they can see Mark's ship but are too far away to get to him. After putting on a spacesuit and fastening herself to a chair outside the spacecraft with a piece of rope, the commander approaches Mark. Since the wire isn't long enough, Mark utilizes the air pressure to lead him to the commander after making a hole in his suit. They return inside to rejoin the rest of the crew once she captures him and pulls him in. They inform NASA that Mark has arrived and they are en route home. A few years later, Mark is back on Earth, instructing NASA initiates on space safety and readiness. The crew of the Hermes watches the launch of the Ares 5 with their loved ones on television. Movie ends here.